Hey, Pet Service Pros, this is your host, Anthony Flores. Before we get to the show, I would like to personally extend an invitation for you to join us at Pierre.fm. Pierre is a pet service marketplace that helps pet service stores accept bookings through our website and super simple to use mobile app. Just think, guys, Expedia for pet services. It's free to join. There are no setup fees, no minimums. You only pay when you get orders, and you can cancel our service anytime. Guys, consumer behavior is changing and consumers expect a simple and transparent way to book your services. Whether you're an established pet service store and looking to stay ahead of the game or new to the pet service industry, Pierre can help you to grow your business. To learn more, visit us at Pierre.fm today. Pierre.fm. Now let's get to the show. Hey, listeners. Are you struggling to get more followers and simply don't have a social media strategy? You're going to want to tune in today. We're back and I'm Anthony Flores, and today we're going to do episode 1 of what I'd like to call the pet influencer economy. Our guest today, pet influencer David Ha and his dog Bowser have over 20,000 followers and growing. Will be teaching us the insights on how to up our Instagram game. And the best part, you guys, is that you can do it with the resources you already have. Enjoy the show.
From the Pierre headquarters in Los Angeles, Pierre presents The Shift, a pet services podcast. A show where pet service pros learn the latest trends in design, marketing, technology, and the stories from other pet industry entrepreneurs and the businesses they built.
The Shift. David, I appreciate you and Bowser coming out today.
Thank you for having us here. We're really excited.
Absolutely. So explain to our audience what you do exactly and how you kind of got into the industry.
So basically what me and Bowser do is we think of ourselves as basic micro-influencers, or we like to be able to show what is capable of being an influencer in the market of pet industry. One of the biggest things that Bowser and I like to do is that we like to do things with different clothing, fashion, food, pop culture references. So it's kind of a little bit unique, different from just your normal everyday dog photos.
Yeah, for those that haven't seen pictures of Bowser, can you explain to the audience his breed and kind of how was he adopted? I don't recall. Can you explain that, please?
Sure. So basically, Bowser was adopted. A family couldn't take care of him for some personal family reasons. So we adopted him into our family when he was about 3 months old. So he's a mini golden doodle. So he's a F1 breed. So he's a mixture between a poodle and a golden retriever. So he's about 20 pounds. So one of the advantages of having a mini golden doodle is that it's hypoallergenic. So he doesn't shed. So one of his style is that what we try to create is kind of like a hipster, dapper type of look with clothing, such as things with ties, bow ties, vests, dress shirts, things like that.
Who picks out the clothing? Do you work on like the wardrobe in advance? Do you, like when you're posting on Instagram too? Is it something that you change daily, or how does that work exactly?
So I pick up the clothing. It's funny because I don't know how to dress at all. I don't dress properly, and my wife always makes fun of me saying that I don't have a fashion sense. So I use Bowser as an example of what I can express myself. So I pick all his clothes in advance. So what I do is I have an idea into the week. I normally like to take all the photos per the week in advance. So I'll pick out outfits per day, or I'll go to a photo shoot for 2-3 hours with 5, 7, 8 outfits, take a bunch of photos and use them for the week.
And do you make the clothes, or where do you buy his outfits?
So I don't make any of his clothes. All the outfits are by a couple of companies that I use quite frequently. Without West is a company that provides most of his clothes. Dog Shop Thread is another one. Mm-hmm. And then Paul Ties does his bow ties. But a couple of these companies offer really great clothing that are, very customizable to your pets or dogs.
So when you say customizable, do you mean like in terms of size? Because one thing that I noticed that when we have purchased dog clothing in the past, there's a lot of times you see like kind of a one size fits all, or then we have our dog try something on, it doesn't quite fit. How'd you figure that out? Is any of the stuff custom, or is there a very specific size that you look for, and perhaps you only work with certain companies because you know that the fit is right?
So one of the things we do work with certain companies, because I know that they make clothing a little bit, like for example, on the Golden Doodle, their body shape, it's a little bit longer. So I would tend to get clothing that fits a little bit longer, or the body will be kind of cropped with the shirts. But there's some companies that make dogs for like corgis that has a unique body shape, or Dachshund. So they'll make a little bit longer clothing length versus the normal regular one size fit all dog clothing. But the companies I work with are pretty good. They can custom tailor, or they can actually kind of adjust as much as possible to fit your dog if you request it on that one.
You know, it's funny. We, I'd say about 2 or 3 months ago, we had shared a post, and I can't recall the girl's name, but she makes kind of hipster-like outfits for dogs. And she has a matching sweater. So she makes her clothes so that they match with your own clothes. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, so there's a couple of companies, Wolf Out West, Shop Dog Thread. They both make matching like Hawaiian shirts, for example, or matching sweater, things like that. They did for Mother's Day, Father's Day. They have like track jackets, hoodies that match together, which is pretty interesting that a lot of people do. Or they do family photos, for example, on that one. They were all the dogs and the humans matched together.
That's so cool. You know what? I want to get into kind of... for our listeners that are active on social media and they want to build a following, I want to break down the different categories of influencers, right? You considered yourself a micro-influencer. Can you kind of break that down a little bit for our listeners?
Yeah, so the different type is what we call micro-influencers. There's an account that maybe you have less than 50,000 followers. Obviously, there's really big accounts that have a couple of 100,000, millions of even followers. So the biggest difference we will see is that the bigger influencers will probably have a lot more agency or opportunities to work with film thing. But what I find with micro influencers is that they have better engagement with their followers, because I feel that they actually have more comments, or they'd be able to more engage and have the time, since they're not as big of a following. So you find out if their followers actually like the products that they try or the things that they use. It's not just for a monetary reason they post something. They actually like the product.
Gotcha. And I see that you have, this is just Instagram alone. So I'd be interested to see like what else is working for you as far as social, but you're just shy of 20,000 followers.
I'm basically just using Instagram so far. I know a lot of other people use Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, combination of those. So far, it's been working pretty well using just Instagram. It's been close to 2 years. We have about 20,000 followers. So I'm pretty happy with the growth. I never expected someone wanted to see pictures of him dressed up in clothes. So that's, we're pretty happy.
That's pretty wild. So at what point did you decide that you're going to go into the influencer business?
I would say close to when I had maybe about 5,000 followers. I felt that maybe he could do something a little bit different, that people may be interested in seeing his posts or his products or things that we recommend. At the beginning, it was just kind of for fun, for friends or just random people. But now we feel that if we are representing a product or a brand that we truly like it, we won't just represent anything that people pay us to. We want to make sure what we are showcasing is actually something that we like and we actually trust.
As far as the photo shoot for a brand, how do you kind of look at that, and how do you plan that? Is the brand actually involved in the shoot itself, or is it something that you kind of plan yourself?
So with brands, depending on the different type of what they would like, some leave the creativity up to you, so that you can be able to, they trust. Based on what your Instagram is, they trust your ability, your creativity to create something for their brand that matches. Some have specific saying that they want to have a specific look, feel, wording. So it really just depends on the brand of what they want to achieve on that one.
And do they usually send you guys props to use, or is that something that you have to go out and buy yourself?
Usually, there's no props. We have to buy ourselves, like the clothing we buy ourselves, unless it's a brand for clothing. Then they will go ahead and give you like a shirt or anything to advertise. But like things for food or other products, usually what we try to do is like food. We try to make it an environment like a kitchen, like he's cooking, something like that to kind of tie it all in with the food. If it's a product that you use for traveling, things like that, we try to use with like a vacation or things like that. We try to tie together with the advertisement.
And I guess when you're actually shooting, I'm guessing that you're kind of looking at, which pictures had gotten the most engagement. What have you learned? Are there any takeaways from your shoots where you're like, you know what, you're constantly aware of what's working, let's do that again?
So I think the biggest thing with photos that people actually gives the biggest engagement is quality. Good lighted photo, it's clear. Pictures that shows the dog's eyes, face. Usually is the one that do really well lit areas. Photos I know generally then don't do that well is, for example, since he's a very small dog, if I put him in front of a mirror or a wall, unfortunately, it doesn't showcase him. It showcases more of a mural or a wall that usually generally don't do as well as just a close-up shot of him in his outfit or with a particular product on that one.
So what about if you don't, say that you don't have the environment controlled, right? Where you're out, at a meetup or, you're out and about. How do you, I guess, creatively kind of control your environment when you're not at home and you don't have props and you don't have control of lighting?
So one of the advantages is that having really good smartphone cameras or DSLR cameras that can help with lighting really helps. Obviously, what we try to do is see what props or what things are there, and we try to make it creative, make it fun. If it's in a dark area, we could just think like if it's, a happy hour or wine or like a nightclub or something to kind of use the environment as best as possible to be creative on that one. Obviously, nothing's always ideal. We try to make it as much as possible.
Equipment, you had mentioned a second ago. Are you carrying around a bunch of equipment when you're shooting, or are you mainly, I think I saw that you had an Android phone, right?
Yeah. So I have 2 Android phones. I carry a Pixel phone, which I think takes the best photo in terms of for a smartphone. I have an Android phone. Then I have a DSLR Sony camera as well. So the smartphone is actually nice because, if I'm in public, I can use the smartphone to take photos. I don't want to attract as much attention. But sometimes if I really want a really good shot, then I'll use my DSLR to provide the better lighting, the better, fade in the background, the blur. So it really helps. Or sometimes need a wider angle that I cannot do with my smartphone, that I will have to use my DSLR camera or a nicer camera on that one.
I'm looking at your feed here too, and I wonder, are you using, is there any type of software you're using to kind of see what your feed is going to look like in advance before you post?
So there's a lot of times people like what they call the look or the feed of how it looks to audience. They want to create a certain look. But for me, I don't use any particular software. Some people use certain filters to create a certain kind of, preset of how it's going to look. I basically try to keep the same look in terms of like mostly with clothing, mostly either with food or thing adventure, but I don't use any pre-software. But I do use a lot of editing software that help me edit the photos on that one.
Like what kind that you can share with us?
Photoshop. I use basically, there's a program in the phone, it's called Snapseed. It works very well, quick edits, things like that. I obviously use Lightroom for all my raw photos from my DSLR that I do for post-processing. But mostly 90% of the time I use Snapseed, edit field lighting, and then, be able to post it that way.
Snapseed's a good one. That's actually Google's photo editing program. What about for video? Are you...
So for video, we use Premiere to do. Obviously on the phone, there's a program called InShot. It's really basic. You can add captions, you get, edit, trim it. But video is a little bit more harder to do without taking the time. So I haven't done too many videos, but I would like to start getting into them.
How frequently, for those that are listening, this is a common question. How important is it to be consistent with social media to grow your audience?
So I think the most important thing is to be able to engage consistently. Obviously, posting consistently. If you're going to be posting maybe once a week or once every couple of weeks, people's not going to notice you. People's not going to be engaged with you. Obviously, posting at least minimum 3 times a week. If you could post almost every day, that'd be even a little bit better. But basically, on every single time someone comments on your post, if you have the time, I would recommend commenting or engaging back so they feel it's authentic, that they get to know you and you're talking to them. They're not just talking to an empty screen on the phone.
That's true. I mean, I'm looking at one of these posts here. You've got 659 likes on one of these posts, and this was in 2018. That number is a lot larger now. How much time do you spend each day kind of managing your social and also engaging with fans?
So one of the biggest things with Instagram is that when you do a post within the first hour, they say that's the most important time to engage with people. So what they usually do is that within the first hour, if it's engaged, then they will release it to your other followers. So I don't know if most people know or not, Instagram normally releases it to only 10% of your followers. Mm-hmm. If the post does well or is trending, then it will release it to your other 90%. So in order for your post to do well, you will want to go ahead and comment or engage with the people who like your photos, for example. Mm-hmm. But typically I'll spend, after posting, maybe an hour to engage with my current post, the people at my feed. And then maybe at night after work, I can do like another hour before I go to bed on that one.
Now, going back to like the other social platforms, like Facebook, are you using Facebook at all?
No, I'm not using Facebook or any other platform. Since, just started Instagram, it's just been hard just to manage the Instagram itself. But I haven't really thought about using other platforms. But I know some other dogs do YouTube videos, obviously Facebook. But I feel Instagram is, where it's really popular. The other one's really popular is TikTok now.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's more a worldwide audience. There's a lot of users in Asia, different countries. I think they're one of the fastest growing social platform right now, I think.
What do you think that you have to do in order to increase your following? So you go from 20,000, I don't know, to say 100,000. Or maybe what is it that you're not doing currently right now that you feel like if you did, it's definitely going to work, but maybe it's a little bit time consuming?
I think the biggest thing that is just basically going and engaging with people. One of the things that help is going to a lot more events, is getting your name out there, working with other social media influencer, other branding and company. Since currently right now I'm working a full-time job, it's hard to put that time every week. So I think one of the biggest things that, if I were to focus on full-time, I feel I could reach a certain thing. But I don't know financially currently right now would it be, it will work on that one.
That hurts. So I remember you mentioning that, the micro-influencer level, typically it's a little bit harder to, not harder, but it's a different ball game from, an influencer that has a really, really big reach, right? Where some of them are getting paid a decent amount of money, whereas I think you mentioned at the micro-influencer level, a lot of times it's not, payment exactly. It might be an exchange of goods or services, right?
Correct. So a lot of the top or the higher end influence that has a couple 100,000, millions of followers may get paid monetary for a certain post, advertisement, just like a commercial or any other product. While a lot of micro-influencer, instead of monetary money they gave you, they exchange for a product, like let's say a free hair shampoo, a free dog treat, a free shirt or anything in exchange instead of money. So usually in the micro-influencer, it's hard to make enough money to give up your job and be able to just focus on that.
Mm-hmm. Some of the bigger guys, there's a dog named Marnie, the one with this kind of tongue. He has, I want to say it's definitely over 1 million followers. How do you get to that point?
I think the biggest way for certain influencer and to get to a certain point is uniqueness. I mean, obviously with him, it's his tongue. Some of the other, like Popeye the Foodie that I know, it's with his food, for example. Or there's a dog that, there's a Shiba Inu dog that dresses up in men's dress wear. So I think the biggest thing to differentiate yourself is to be unique and different.
Yeah. There was the other golden doodle that I think is a mini, the one in New York, where they have him kind of standing up in front of the subway, and people can identify with that subway too. And he has huge following, right?
Yeah. So I think it's Pooch of New York. It's one of the first accounts that I followed with Bowser. It's kind of my inspiration.
Yep.
One of these poses that Bowser does is called a model pose that I kind of looked after him, of him standing in front of, lights, or any other stand. But his look is just like a New York businessman, drinking his coffee, reading his newspaper, going shopping, going dating. So, it's actually a really unique look that he has.
Super unreal too. If you look at the pictures and you look at, the dog's eyes too, you had mentioned earlier how there's close-ups. It looks like they're humans. Like behind some of these dogs, it's surreal, right?
Yeah. So I think a lot of the dog photographers that I work with says the eyes is the one that captures the soul of the dog.
Yeah.
Basically expresses them that they almost look like human-like.
Yeah. How do you get Bowser, for example, I've seen him stand up when we met. He was standing up taking photos. How do you train him to do that?
So one of the things we taught him was we put him against the wall. We basically give him a treat. We let him learn maybe 5 seconds, 10 seconds. We basically start increasing that. Then we adding a command. We sometimes use a clicker. So when there's a certain noise or sound, he knows that he's performing a trick. So we start adding model pose and pointing to a wall. So he'll automatically put his hands above the wall. Then we start doing longer for 30 seconds. He can now maybe do up to a minute now, if longer, depending on the amount of distraction. But I could point to a certain spot and say model pose, and he could be able to stand up.
What else does he do? Is there any other tricks?
So a couple of things that he does, he likes to do balancing tricks. He balances things on top of his nose, such as cups, treats, different type of things, like a circus. Yep. It's kind of funny. Then he also likes to do a lot of the basic dog commands, but he likes to perform and he likes attention.
Mm-hmm. That's so cute. I want to go back to Instagram because I think this is something that is, the platform itself is kind of inherently viral because it's imagery and it's you look at a picture, you don't have to do a whole lot of reading. But I'm curious to know what I'm seeing a lot more of on Instagram is that people are writing on Instagram a lot too, as if it's a blog post. Have you seen that? Have you tested that at all to see if it helps, like the caption area?
So I see a lot with people that are sharing their real life experience and story. It's kind of like more like you mentioned, like a blog post. Yep. They'll share their experience with a certain food, brand, or service. And then basically instead of just a quick 1 or 2 sentences, they actually write a story. I see that more and more people find that more engaging because people feel they can connect with the actual influencer or the person who's behind the Instagram. It's just not a picture. So I find that in posts that I put a long caption or I try to explain something, I get more response or people want to engage with me more than versus just a happy Friday or something like that.
So that's a tip, you guys. If you want to get more engagement, I think you've got to connect with your following, right? And then also be very authentic, right?
Yes. So one of the biggest things I think when I first started, I noticed a lot more dog account. People wanted to see the owners. People wanted to engage with photos with, not just the dog. I noticed some of the bigger followings have people with their families because they want to know that it's real. They can relate to this person. People don't always share perfect moments all the time. They, share moments that the dog, might have had an accident or it may have gotten in trouble or rip a socks or something like that. I think that what helps makes everything feel that it's real.
Have you, I was curious to know, I guess your take on, the world that we're going into where, a lot of the younger kids today, they're brought up on social media, right? And, the hit of dopamine they get from, a like or a share, etc. I'm just curious to know, like, what is your take on that? And do you find yourself looking at your phone a lot to see, because you said you've got to engage. So I'm just curious, like, do you block out time for that? And how has it changed your quality of life?
So that's really fun because my wife would be upset that I spend too much time on Instagram. But one of the things is that when you put a post, you feel that the like is the people liking your photo or not, the quality of your work. If more likes, you feel that you did something good. If there's less like, you feel that, hey, did I do something wrong? Did I caption it differently? Should I take a better photo? So that feeling, it's a very high and very low at the same time. I can mention like kids, if they put a photo and they don't get as much likes, I can feel it. It's like sort of like bullying, but not, they feel that sadness if no one likes their photo. When I first started, it was one of the biggest things. I put something in like, how come I have 100 likes? Another dog has 700 likes. Why? What's the difference? And you feel like you're not doing as well. But as you learn as time goes on that, there's a lot of different reasons behind that. Likes is not necessarily, it's different between a good photo and a non-good photo. But I feel that I definitely stopped trying to compare myself to a lot of other accounts and just trying to be authentic with what I put as content.
Mm-hmm. Has it helped your following by doing that?
I feel it has my following. I feel I get more genuine followers. I feel that people actually care about what I do, what I post, and what I talk about versus, people just follow me because I have a big number or a big account.
Yeah, I think that, I guess the following to me is, I don't think is not the end all be all, right? It's more about the engagement. Say you've got 10,000 followers, but your engagement is super, super high because they're true fans, right? And I think a lot of people kind of focus on how many followers they have versus how much engagement they have. And I think that as an influencer, especially if you're monetizing, that matters, right? The engagement number actually matters and it helps, correct?
I feel that if you're an influencer in doing a product, for example, that you should use the product, you actually like the product, and making sure something that you want to let your followers know that they should use because you feel it's a worthy product or it does something that you think will help. I know there's influencers, for example, you could sell them XYZ. They'll do it just because it's money. Mm-hmm. I feel that's not something I would want to do.
Yeah, you know what? Going back to Instagram again on stories, I'm curious to know, and I've seen that too, where people, they're sponsoring products that they're not using and they're not authentic. This goes way back in advertising. I remember watching a video of Carmelo Anthony sponsoring milk. I mean, come on. Do you think the guy doesn't drink milk? I can guarantee that. So I think being authentic is huge. And I think one way that I realize that the feedback that I'm getting that works really well is Q&A. And people really getting to know you on stories and doing a Q&A. Have you tried that yet?
Yeah, so in stories, one of the great features of Instagram now, they have a lot of questions and answers. You could post the questions, people submit what they want to ask you, and we could answer it back and share it. So a lot of things people want to know, story of how you got Bowser, where is he from, how is he like at home, how you dress him, where you pick his clothes. So it really helps engage with the followers of talking to them besides just a post. They feel it's more spontaneous, more instant.
Yeah, and they kind of, it's educational as well. How do you look at questions when they come through? I'm guessing you get a lot.
So basically what I try to look at questions is I try to take the ones that are most common. If people ask a more general question, like 5 or 10 people ask the same questions, I try to tackle that one first to cover a more broader range of people. Sometimes I pick questions that are more unique, like, things of like, what does Bowser like to do? Or some more unique ones that I thought would be fun to share that probably they don't know.
That's right. And, have you tried contests at all or on stories?
So I know a lot of people do a lot of giveaways and contests before. I'm not really big fan of particular those. I want to, if I'm giving away something or I'm liking something, I want to make sure it's something I like. But I haven't really done too much giveaways or contests on that one.
Mm-hmm. Are there specific brands that you at some point you want to work with? And do you reach out to them direct or do you have them usually reach out to you? So
we have it both ways. For a lot of the like dog food or brands, there have a lot of them reach out to me. But for sometimes we do like travel and we like to work with a certain hotel brand. Let's say if I'm going to Portland or anywhere, which I recently did a trip, I was able to reach out to some brands or hotels to be able to advertise their pet-friendly hotels or the accommodation that's very good for dogs in a hotel. Because I think one of the biggest things, especially I like to travel with my wife. we were never really able to bring our dogs because we didn't know, having extra hotel fees or where to bring which hotel takes. So one of the advantages that I like was to be able to work with certain hotels to showcase that.
That's right. You're starting to see that more and more. These hotels are becoming pet friendly. We stayed recently at the Langham in Pasadena. Really beautiful hotel, and they had basically a dog setup. So they had the bed waiting for our dog Pierre, and they had the dog bowls too. I think you're starting to see this more and more. And they didn't charge us either, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, so there's a lot of hotels that offer pets to stay up, and a lot of them offer extra charge. They'll have the bed, they'll have dog bowls, food. A couple of ones that I've been to, they even give us treats ready for the dogs. They put a map of where the dog parks were.
That's right.
So that's actually really cool, because especially in a new city, if you have a pet, you're not really familiar with the area, that it really helps out.
That totally helps. And what about traveling? Like any tips on how you guys travel with Bowser? I'm guessing he's sitting inside of the plane with you and not in cargo.
Right. Correct. So Bowser sits on the plane, and he's less than 20 pounds, so he's able to sit with us. So one of the biggest things that I think tip is to try everything at home before we go. Do a lot of practice runs. So for example, we put him in a travel bag. We'll let him sit inside for maybe 10, 15 minutes. We'll increase the time to maybe 30 minutes to an hour as we go. Reward him with treats. So the time when you fly, he's comfortable and used to being in the travel bag versus the first time you're just throwing him in there, going through security and everything. And then the biggest tip is plan a lot of time ahead. It's a lot different when you're carrying a dog through security or rushing through an airport. If they have to use the bathroom, they won't wait.
That is true. So do you guys, you kind of take them out before you guys go inside? Because what I notice is that when we travel with Pierre, I can't force him to go to the bathroom. And, at some point, he's going to need to go. And sometimes we're traveling 5-6 hours. So how do you overcome that?
So the biggest thing that I do is that I usually take him to a dog park, or I'll walk him at least an hour to two before we fly. So that usually puts him pretty tired and necessary to go out to the bathroom. I'll make sure he goes to the bathroom. A lot of the airports are now having pet relief area, so that's a huge advantage. So make sure he goes before he flies. Some that's been helping, some people were giving dogs CBD treats to help with anxiety. So that really helps.
Yep. I've heard a lot of good stuff about CBD for dogs too. Have you tried it with Bowser?
He tried one or two before we went on a flight. It seems to kind of keep him a little bit more mellow. In general, he's pretty calm, so that really helps already. But I have a couple other dogs that they tried that had high anxiety when we leave them at home, and it kind of helps them.
Yeah, that's what I hear. I hear that stuff can really work. I get a little bit nervous because I'm not, it's still kind of a newer industry. I don't think it's heavily regulated yet. So you don't know who's actually making the CBD, and you kind of want to stand behind a brand, but a lot of these brands are new too. So there's no history behind a lot of these brands yet.
So a lot of these brands, like you mentioned, the ones that I worried about is the ones coming from overseas that don't have no regulations that I want to give them. So there's a couple of USA brands, but what I try to work with the brands that are originally doing human CBD, that they actually evolve into doing pet CBD that has a little bit longer history. Obviously, we like influencers, just like I mentioned, the biggest thing is asking friends or other groups of dogs that we work with what works, what they tried. Obviously, there's other influencers that tried a bunch of different brands, didn't work. So the advantage of having a group of networking is be able to ask fellow influencers or dog owners what they used and be able to share it.
That's right. Yeah. I think there's that element of, face-to-face and meeting people. That's how we met too. How much of your success is related to, going to events and showing up and meeting people face to face?
I think I would say majority, like more than half of I feel my success is meeting people and going to events. I feel sometimes with just behind Instagram, people might like your photo. They don't know how to connect with you. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we started going to was going to dog events. Unfortunately, we live in LA, which is a pretty big capital for a lot of dog events. So we go to like birthday parties, we go to press events, we go to movie screenings for dog movies. Sony released like a dog's journey that we did a recent press event for. So I feel with that, it helps connect meeting a lot of other influencer people in the market industry that can expose your dog a lot more.
That is a good point. I think we're starting to realize that too. And I think, we're kind of going into a world where people want to just sit behind, a phone or a computer and build a business. And I just think that it's very difficult to do without that, in real life factor. You kind of have to do both in order so people can see your dog in real life. That is the way to go, I think, moving forward too. I think a lot of people are pulling away from, meeting people in person. I think it should be the opposite.
Yeah, I think, one of the biggest things I like is actually the live one-on-one action or with people in person. I feel that makes it genuine and actually shows, the effect that dogs or any pet has on people, make them happy, make them smile. It's just really hard to be able to sit back behind a computer or a phone all day and expect people to grow your page behind there anymore.
And you're doing it, and you're working a full-time job too.
Yeah, that's the hard part. My weekends are spent going to dog parties and event, much to my wife's dismay.
Does she go with you guys too?
She tries to go as much as possible, but obviously we have 2 other dogs, so she wants to stay home with some of my other dogs too. But she goes to as much as possible events possible.
Oh, that's interesting. So you have 2 other dogs. How does that play out when Bowser is he the only influencer in the family?
Bowser's the only influencer in the family. So it's funny when at home, the other dogs doesn't care who he is. he's their little brother that they pick on. But it's funny dynamic that when he goes out, he feels like a celebrity getting all the attention. But when he's home, he could be a family dog with us. So that's what I feel. It's very important that we can remain a family together.
So how do you balance that when you get home? Do you Bowser's here with us now. The other dogs are not. So when he gets home, do you kind of drop him off and spend time with the other dogs too?
So biggest thing that I usually like to do is after I drop Bowser back at home with the 2 other dogs, I like to spend a little bit more me time with them, either by going on a walk, playing them outside in the backyard with them, giving them extra treats while I let Bowser relax and from the day event. So that way they don't feel as alone or not as connected. It's funny because at home I spent more time with the 2 other dogs than with Bowser. But, it works out evenly.
So how do you balance that out with the wifey? Is she with you guys too? Or
it's a good thing that my wife likes dogs or loves dogs. So it helps that we can all share the moment together. Mm-hmm. But obviously I feed and I take the dogs for a walk. My wife likes to cuddle with them. Mm-hmm. So my other dogs spend a lot of time on the couch with them, watching TV, relaxing with them.
I want to create a scenario here. A lot of our listeners are people in the pet industry, a lot of pet service stores. I want to kind of get inside of your brain a little bit from a marketing standpoint and see if you can perhaps put yourself in like a pet service store's shoes. You're an owner of a pet service store. What would you do to create a following for their Instagram?
I think the biggest thing would be to be able to get your name out there, either by going to events, like I mentioned, having that one-on-one action to get people to know you. I think without knowing you, it's very hard to trust your brand or service. Word of mouth, obviously, is very important. Getting out there, to reaching people, providing service to them. I think those are the main thing of just having that pure, real, genuine interaction versus just setting up a piece of flyer saying, hey, I have whatever pet service I'm doing.
One thing I noticed as we're building our following on Instagram, it's a little bit challenging because, we have a service. So it's not, like you have Bowser that you can carry around and he has a life of his own. But when you have a service, it becomes a little bit more challenging. Are there any tips or ideas that you have for someone that actually has a service that wants to build a following but doesn't have a Bowser to kind of hang around and build a brand on?
I think the biggest thing with service is if you could demonstrate to people the value of your service. Either be, for example, if you're a dog walker, you want to demonstrate that you're attentive, you're on time, you take care of the pet as a dog walker, or whatever service you provide, it makes difference to the owner to be able to pick you versus out of someone else. I think and also I would say personable. Being able to talk to actual customers or service that you provide that makes you stand out different from, any other person.
So really forward facing, right? You kind of have to meet with people. What you see is a lot of owners of pet service stores, they may be working in the business, but a lot of times they're not interacting directly with the customer. So I think maybe do you think that's something that they should be doing moving forward?
I feel like they should talk to the customer more and more, find out what their needs, what issues they're having versus, just trying to sell a service and that they think it's good. They may not know the whole story behind everyday interactions of the customers. I feel that's very important. Things with surveys, things with feedbacks that will help a lot.
Would that be like on Instagram or like how would they do that?
So I feel like one of the biggest things they could do is just something simple. They could just run a story and saying, if there any feedback you guys would like, or ask a Q&A to engage with their customer, or just even put a post and put a comment what you think would be better that they can do.
There's a lot of this industry obviously has been around for a long time, and I'm starting to recently see more innovation. People are getting better at marketing, but for so many years, it's kind of been stale in that way, right? I guess what has been, what do you think of the industry as a whole, and where do you see the future of the industry going?
I feel like the future industry that obviously Instagram, all these things create a marketing environment that can reach a lot of people in a relatively inexpensive way versus old traditional advertisement where you had to put a commercial ad, hire people or thing. Instagram can allow you to get your product or service out there a lot quicker. But I think you have to be innovative or more different. People like things like videos, things that can go viral, something that it's quick. People don't have a lot of, patience. So something that it's very viral, very catchy helps a lot.
Can a picture be as viral as, say, a video, in your opinion?
I feel a video will always be more viral than a picture would be, just because it's just more interactive and more engaging. But there's certain pictures that obviously, a dog and a soldier, it could be very trigger a lot of emotions. It can trigger a lot of feelings that can make something go viral like that. While video could be more funny, it could be more obviously emotional as well. But I feel video generally triggers going viral a lot faster than a photo would be.
What are some of the biggest takeaways that you've had over the last 2 years from being in the industry as an influencer?
I think the biggest takeaway, the most important thing for me is to remember that we're doing this is because our love for pets, our love for our own dogs or anything. So, I always try to remind myself not to put him in situations where he's going to be uncomfortable or overexert him, because the main thing that he is the most important. And try to remind myself that, this is something we do for fun or as much as possible help, but it's not something put pressure on ourselves. I think that's the biggest thing that really helps me, because it could be very pressuring. It could be very stressful if we take it very seriously every single day.
That's right. So preparing, like you said earlier, right? Big deal.
Big deal.
If our audience wanted to reach out to you, perhaps a brand that wanted to collaborate with you, what is the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Obviously, they can message me through Instagram. I have my email, it's bowserkoopa@gmail.com. It's also linked in my bio. But those are usually the best ways. I'm usually pretty active. I get back to people mostly pretty quick.
Guys, if you haven't seen Bowser, make sure that you follow them. He's the cutest little guy. He's here. Super quiet, too. He's like well-trained. David, thank you so much for coming. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Hey guys, we really hope you enjoyed this episode, and thanks so much for listening to the show this week. You can subscribe wherever you're listening, and we love feedback. So feel free to also leave us a review. You can also visit us on Instagram at Book with Pierre. Until next time, I'm Anthony Flores, and you're listening to The Shift, a pet service podcast.